This is IBM Museum, and I have a little bit of an update for a video I did earlier, and that was going through and saving a file under ROM Basic on this IBM PS2 Model 60. And I thought I remembered at some point of the ability to save a basic program as an ASCII file, but what do they say? Read the manual. And so I'm back with the manuals. In fact, a few of them, and I'll go through and cover that process. I'm going to keep on the camcorder for now, but then I'll flip over to the basic, ROM basic on the system and be able to, at least we have that program saved in tokenized format from earlier that I can go through and work with that program without having to type it in again. So I'm going to get off the webcam. I will get just on the main camcorder view. Now, the manual in this case is, and I've seen these in different formats. I have to even discover what the difference is, because you'll find the basic binders like this. And I mean, there's lots of them out there. I have a few of these around, and I have the two basic versions that you'll see, no pun intended, is that some will actually have a sticker marking as 3.0 on the spine. And I think that relates just because I have another one that's not quite as common, and I'll ultimately need to do a little bit of an unboxing for this, because this is basic reference 3.20, excuse me. And it lists on the back, software required DOS 3.20. This basic and advanced basic are provided with DOS 3.20. Software included none. And system requirements, the basic interpreter publication version 3.20 is appropriate for the IBM family of personal computers that can support DOS 3.20. So I'm going to break the shrink wrap on this at some later point, just to find out what the differences are to the earlier manual. But I believe the 3.0 marking is just the DOS version. I think these came out with like the the AT, IBM AT, based on 286 CPU, and probably the earlier versions are the XT. And that mainly relates to that basic or basic A stub that loads that basic environment and can go through and probably enhance certain features. And just because we're on DOS 3.3 here, I'm going to go through, and I think this manual 3.0 is fine. But going to the save command, and this is all organized alphabetically for these binders. And so here we have the save command, and saves a basic program on file, or basic program file on disk or cassette. And it has the versions listed below that: cassette, disk, advanced, or compiler. Now, compiler is extraneous to this conversation, but notice it says cassette there, because with the original PC, that ROM basic was called cassette basic, and you had a cassette interface. And there's been even some interesting YouTube videos, even on like Westlife, going through and trying to work with the tape drive connected up to the IBM PC. And IBM never did a cassette drive of their own. They just had the interface and but you could use third-party cassette drives for a very rudimentary level of saving a program to cassette tape. And so really the cassette in this instance is referring to not necessarily to the PC, but in effect of what I refer to as ROM basic, that you don't have a functional boot drive that you just go through and get dropped into the ROM basic program. And in that instance, you don't effectively have, I mean, they've got it identified for asterisks for a cassette, because if you had the cassette interface on the PC, you could ultimately save, and you could also load a program from cassette tape. But under ROM basic, you don't necessarily have a functional drive. You're not using a system command to return back to DOS. You don't have that ability. And so really here, the save command has that qualifier. And primarily we're going from the disk or advanced being checked in this instance, that we can go through and in this instance of the Model 60, where I boot it up to the hard drive, and we're going to run the basic environment here in just a moment, that is applicable in this instance. And they have this format, and they show the save file spec, and then a comma A, and save file spec comma P, and it talks about the file spec being that, you know, basically that that 8.3 format of how you name the file. And of course, basic program, a lot of time you're doing the file extension of BAS as by convention. And of course, it goes through, you know, as it says for cassette basic, the only device is the cassette device, which is not available in any of the later systems after the PC. And talks about for disk basic, advanced basic, the device defaults to the DOS default drive. Although certainly if you have a working hard drive and a working diskette drive, you can save something to diskette, a basic program. And so over on this page, we get the A option saves the program in ASCII format. Otherwise, basic saves the file in a compressed binary tokenized format. ASCII files take up more space, but for some types of access required that the files be in ASCII format. For example, a file intended to be merged must be saved in ASCII format. Programs saved in ASCII can be read as data files. And that's going to be the primary thing, is you can read the ASCII format outside that basic environment in just a common text editor. And they're talking about in going through and merging files. They're talking about using DOS commands to go through and append and things like that for that ASCII format. And so really, if the space is available, probably the easier way is to go through and save it as an ASCII format, so you can see it outside that basic environment, be able to work with the program. And the next step, the next entry there, the P protection option saves the program in an encoded binary format. When a protected program is later run or loaded, any attempts to list or edit it fails with a legal function called error. No way is provided to unprotect such a program. So that's a way to go through, and if you have a program, and of course, as they say, there's no way to provide to unprotect such a program, you're going through, and even that source, you're going through and it's encoding it from that point, that you should have your source saved in a format that you can work with later on if you want to go through and edit or whatever. And it says this directory entry for a basic program file gives no indication that the file is either protected or stored in ASCII format. The BAS extension is used in any case. And I didn't know if, I don't think the ROM basic goes through and automatically appends the BAS file extension to something, but I was going to go through and make my comments to that effect of that is that's the convention out there to go through and to save a basic program as a BAS extension. Now, there's also this is included in one of the binders here, just a quick reference, and it goes over a lot of the commands and organizes them in function. And the save command, it's under the files listing. It's got a communication section. But under the string functions, and then we have error messages. So it must be a little bit earlier. I must have leafed past it. Screen. Okay, so let's go back to earlier. Okay. I saw it just a moment ago. Okay, development conversions, communications. Okay, there we go. So it even refers to save, you know, it's got quotations, program 4, comma A, and it talks about saving it as an ASCII file. So it's demonstrating that comma A ability within the quick reference as well. I even have things like the basic made easy for the PC Junior. It's not in the same format. It's more of a, you know, going through and learning how to do basic on the PC Junior. But let's go through and get flipped over to, and I've got the autoexec.bat file in there. So we're going through, it's booting up to the DOS prompt fully. And I'll get myself back on the screen. But we can go through, and we've got our basic files. And like, I'll be working with the files that I saved away here. We're just going to go through. We'll start just the basic environment. And if we do like a load command, and load has the same conventions, you got to have a drive effective that you're going to go through and load from in this case. Okay, so it gives an okay, we'll do a list. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a save. Okay, so that's, and we're going to do as, in fact, let's do even in, and it's not case sensitive. So an S is the same value, whether it's uppercase or lowercase, just like effectively in DOS. Okay. Okay. And actually, I forgot that critical detail. We want to go through. As I say, I'm happy when we go through and I make mistakes on video, because if I'm able to catch it, and certainly things can be caught in the comments too, but I forgot that :A. Now, notice this is an environment that doesn't prompt you. If you've already saved a file by the same name, you're going to overwrite what's there. It's not going to give you any warning. So let's do this as well. let's go through and do a save command. And we're just going to save it as test_BAS with no file name extension on it. And we can go through. In fact, let's go through and let's do that P switch. Okay. So we're going to go through and system back. Okay. We're going to do a directory listing of the BAS files. Okay. So it automatically appended that BAS on the end of it, on the end of the file name. Knew that we were in the basic environment. It's just set up that way. So that's great. That's a shortcut people could use. They could go through and either specify it explicitly, which I would recommend to remember that. But the it's just a great way of going through and kind of seeing what the environment does. You start a little test here. So our ASCII, and so let's do this. So if we do the original file, that new token, and of course from DOS, we're listing the extension. We have to go through and specify the exact file name in this case. So there we see that tokenized format. If we do a type of that as ASCII .bas, we get it in an ASCII format. That's great. I mean, that's a way to view it. If we were to go through and do, and of course the type command goes through, it doesn't necessarily recognize that protected format, but it goes through and let's see what the output on that is. That test_BAS .BAS. Okay, so we can see it looks a little bit longer. It's different from the tokenized format, same ultimate program as what that was earlier. So if we go through and we do get back into our basic, if we were to go through and do a load, and we don't have to give it the BAS extension here for that load as well. Okay, so it's loaded. We could do a run command, and that gives us our output. But going through and doing a list command, legal function call. So we have our program there, but it's protected now. And so kind of an interesting way to have things here. So that's the ins and outs. That's a way. And I'm about to go through, and in fact, the reason that this came up was that the someone saying, hey, I've got a whole bunch of basic programs that I saved in that tokenized format. I want to go through, and there's an editor that is able to go through and display those from the tokenized format converted over to ASCII. And the one question I asked is, hey, if you still have a system, an IBM system with ROM basic like this, where functional system, functional hard drive, diskette drive, whatever, to go through and you could get into the basic environment, load the file, and then you can go through and save it as that ASCII format. So it's readable outside that. Even with a regular text editor, you wouldn't have to have a special program to understand that tokenized data to go through and do. And of course, you won't be able to do a protected format. But I would expect, I don't know if anybody's focused on that protection scheme, but you were talking about the 1980s now. People have progressed quite a bit in hacking attempts, and I expect that that's somehow probably relatively trivial because it's machine independent. You could go through and protect the BAS file on one system and be able to run it on another one. But you can't go through and view the contents the way it goes through. So there has to be some hash table that is going through and how it's encoding things. It would be interesting to kind of analyze that a little bit more, or if there's anybody that has broken that scheme by now of those protected files. And probably it's relatively, well, you'd have to see. You'd probably mainly do a lot of different programs with a lot of different basic commands and things like that, and kind of analyze how it saved that file in the protected format, what it seemed like it did compared to that tokenized format. So I don't know, but just going a little bit further, I went through, I read the manual to show that as I remembered it, you could go through and save a basic program in that ASCII format. I remembered it. I didn't remember if it was a certain level, version level or something else, but we see now that it is there. And also that nice ability to do a protected format. There may be occasions for that. And I'm interested in hearing about comments, whether anyone knows of hacks to that protected format as well. So I hope you found this video informative as well. And if you did, go ahead and click on that like button, please, and respond in the comments of what you thought too. And as always, subscribe to my channel if you have not done so already. But this is IBM Museum. That's all I have for now. Thank you.